that while we're supposed to treat animals with respect, they're not to be seen as human beings. They do not have the capacity to emote emotionally, romantically with you. And if that's the case, then you've either lowered your standards or you have somehow imaginatively elevated their capabilities. I'm confused. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where we're dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And I want to watch this video from Pope Francis at a general audience where he's talking about treating pets as children. Check this out.
2 settimane fa mio segretario crociava la piazza e veniva una mamma col carrello col bambino. Lui, un prete tenero, si avvicinò per benedire il bambino. Era un cagnolino. 15 giorni fa, l'udienza mercoledì, io andavo a salutare e arrivai una signora, cinquantenne più o meno, come me, più o meno. Saluto la signora e lei apre una borsa, dice, me lo benedici al mio bambino, cagnolino, lì. Non ho avuto pazienza e ho sgridato la signora, tanti bambini hanno fame. E lei col cagnolino. Fratelli e sorelle, queste sono scene del presente, ma se le cose vanno così, sarà l'abitudine del futuro. Stiamo attenti.
Wow. The Holy Father actually sounding more strict than people love to imagine him to be. You know, a lot of people will sometimes look at the Holy Father and think, I like this Pope better than the previous one, Benedict the 16th, because they thought Benedict was mean. They got it all wrong. Benedict actually created a sanctuary for cats because he loved them so much. And this makes Pope Francis look like he's not a dog lover or something like that. Well, I think what the Holy Father was trying to remind people of is basically what the Catechism teaches us about animals. And it's something that's actually not just in the Catechism, but it's actually biblical, where God created animals before he made the pinnacle creation, who is obviously Adam, man. And he told Adam and Eve to be masters of all of the other creation. And so the Catechism tells us in 2456, animals are entrusted to man's stewardship. He must show them kindness. In Catechism 2415, we see how respect for creation is an integral part of being God's creation. It says, the seventh commandment enjoys respect for the integrity of creation. Animals, like plants and inanimate beings, are by nature destined for the common good of past, present, and future humanities. The use of mineral, vegetable, and animal resources of the universe cannot be divorced from respect for moral imperatives. Man's dominion over inanimate and other living beings, granted by the Creator, is not absolute. It is limited by concern for the quality of life of his neighbor, including generations to come. It requires a religious aspect for the integrity of creation. And because animals are also entrusted to God's providential care, their mere existence gives God glory. Thus, we must owe animals kindness. We should recall the gentleness with which saints like Francis of Assisi or Philip Neri treated animals. So, I love the fact that when Holy Father Francis kind of scolded this woman. I mean, first of all, the Italian is great. I'm so glad that I understand it because I get the nuances for sure. And the subtitles are certainly there. I like the little joke that he cracked about how this woman, about 50 years old, about the same age as he was, Man's got a sense of humor. Sees that this woman wants him to bless her little baby, opens up the little cart, and there's a little dog. And he's like, lady, seriously, there are hungry people in the world. There are hungry children in the world. And while this is your pet, it is not your child. And this is an interesting thing that I'm seeing a lot today, because in the lack of dignity and respect for human life, we replace it with another type of life. We see all kinds of weirdness, to be perfectly honest with you, when it comes to who is part of our family and who deserves our attention and our respect. So an animal obviously deserves to be treated with dignity and care, but it's not your child. And so a lot of people will ask, does that mean that my dog's not to get to heaven? Well, technically, if heaven is going to make you happy only because of your dog, then you can see how there's a real confusion in your priority of what you think heaven is. Because heaven is not going to be one with your dog or your other relatives. It's oneness with God. That's what makes heaven. And you can see that we're placing more emphasis on the created things of this earth rather than in love of the Creator who made those things in a certain order. In a certain order. And so I think what I've got to do is just remind people that the Catechism is very clear that while we're supposed to treat animals with respect, they're not to be seen as human beings. They do not have the capacity to emote emotionally, romantically with you. And if that's the case, then you've either lowered your standards or you have somehow imaginatively elevated their capabilities. Are animals capable of feeling and giving comfort to humans? Yes, but never to replace humans. We are supposed to have a loving, intimate relationship with other humans. When you don't, then we can actually fall into some real odd provocations, including like bestiality. I mean, there's a woman who was known in Europe for marrying a dolphin. And there's another woman from Paris who has fallen in love with the Eiffel Tower, as well as having side relationships with a fence. This is, yeah, like a fence, a gate. And yet, we know that that's just representation of people who aren't altogether there anymore. And we have, in a sense, become that with animals. There's like this over obsession with them. Now, please know, I am actually a dog lover. I like dogs, probably more so than cats. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from people, but you know what? Witches had cats as pets. I'm just saying, all right? But that's another story altogether. However, while dogs are man's best friend, so to speak, they aren't, they're man's best friends because they were supposed to be obedient. And you know what that says about humans? We're no longer obedient to each other. We don't care for anyone anymore. You know, I find that if our world is to continue to develop, then we need to understand consciousness. Consciousness of an animal is very different from a consciousness of a dog. And strangely enough, people are now starting to develop a relationship with artificial consciousness like AI. And let's just say dolls used for things that should only be relegated to a conjugal act between husband and wife. You can see how we're becoming inhumane because we are humanizing animals. We're anthropomorphizing inanimate things. And that's not helpful to developing not only reality, but a human conscience, where we spend more money to care for animals, yet we spend no money caring for humanity. So in this little conversation, I know that I've opened up a can of worms, and I'm happy to, because that's what this is all about. A real conversation about things of faith, culture, and commentary. Go ahead and leave a comment about what you think is appropriate and necessary for how we treat animals. Do you think animals get to heaven? If not, tell me why. If they do, tell me why. But then also got to answer that question. Is heaven going to be living your life for all eternity with your animal or with God? I do want to appreciate something that was said by Charles de Gaulle. He said, the better I get to know man, the more I love dogs. It's a great quote. And it really shows how depraved we as humans can be. And that's why we appreciate pets, because they can't mouth back at us. You know, we don't have to invest a mutual love with a dog, because a dog can't reciprocate that. A dog is just going to be obedient. And in a sense, you just think that a best friend is your slave. Just gives you something to think about, because I love animals. But if you love God first, you are going to love and appreciate all of God's creation in an appropriate hierarchy of importance and good. Man was created last because man was made in God's image and likeness. Let's make sure we understand that, so that we always respect the dignity of all things created, but beginning with the dignity of human life at all stages. Thanks for listening. Again, make sure you leave your comments about what you think of this conversation about the importance of pets. How do you treat them? And more importantly, subscribe to our channel. And if you're able, support us on our Patreon community, where you can get some amazing perks as well as some member benefits. And as always, stay hungry for God as we continue to dish out faith, culture, and commentary.